going to have that honeymoon phase where everything is beautiful and wonderful. And then you're going to hit that point where it's like, you hate everything and you're ready to just pull up and just be done with it. But then if you can kind of stick through it and be like, you know what, and just finally get to a place of integration where you're like, you know what, this place isn't as wonderful as I thought it would be, and it isn't as horrible. It's just, it's real, and it is what it is. And you kind of accept all of it, you know, warts and all. And that's when you're in that sweet spot where you can really start kind of thriving. And, you know, I've seen it with my kids. Like I've seen them grow and blossom, and being able to, you know, make friends with kids of a completely different culture and a completely different language. Like that's a skill that translates into so many other areas of their life as they grow up. Like they'll be able to take the lessons that they've learned from this experience into anything, when they're older, right? Like, resiliency and, conflict management and embracing differences, and knowing that, you know, even if you are different, whatever, you know, whatever environment you're in, even if you're like the only one of you, whatever that means, you can still thrive. You can still enjoy yourself. You can still, accomplish whatever it is you want to accomplish. You can still make friends. So yeah, that's why we wanted that. So our kids could have that, and so that our kids would know, and so that even ourselves would know like what it's like to be here. Because it's another way to connect with people. Like when we go back to the States and stuff, and we're able to run into someone who's from Oaxaca, and then we end up talking and just having the best time, like bonding over this shared thing, and it makes them happy that someone knows about, you know, whatever hometown they're from, and makes us happy to be like, oh my gosh, we know about this, we know about that, and you know, it's just a really cool experience. So that's why we think it's important that when you go somewhere, whether it's to move somewhere or just to visit for a little bit, try it, even in the simplest of ways, just to really connect with the people there. Like, it's valuable.
Welcome to Travel Love Legacy, a podcast that highlights and celebrates the experiences of Black and Brown families who use travel as a means to create and build a legacy. Hear the stories of Black and Brown parents who are building a nest egg of long-lasting memories, resiliency, and worldly perspectives for their young ones. I'm Melanie, the host and creator, the Trinidadian Canadian mother of a pink-obsessed and awe-inspiring princess. Travel Love Legacy is a collection of stories that serves to inspire those who are yet to take the leap, so together we can leave behind a world filled of Black and Brown global citizens.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Travel Love Legacy. Today we're diving deep into the incredible journey of Ashley. Now, Ashley is a devoted mother who made the bold decision to uproot her family and relocate to Mexico. I mean, get ready to be inspired because Ashley shares her insights into homeschooling, navigating cultural differences, and finding a sense of belonging in a new land. Through Ashley's experiences, listeners will glean valuable lessons on embracing discomfort, fostering empathy, and forging meaningful connections across cultural divides. Join us as we explore the beauty of Mexican culture and the transformative power of stepping outside our comfort zones. To begin, I've asked Ashley to introduce herself, a bit of her family, and some of her background so that we can dive right into her travels.
So hey everybody, my name is Ashley. I'm a stay-at-home mom of two, currently living in Mexico. Like I said, we homeschool, or what we like to also call world school, because we really want the kids to embrace where they're living at and learn the new culture that they're in. So we take as many opportunities as we can to get the kids immersed, while here in Mexico, learning the language, learning about the different geography we're in and everything. I'm really into herbs, natural healing type things, which has been great learning about while down here. And yeah, really looking forward to seeing more and more Black and brown families traveling and enjoying the world like we're supposed to. Husband, I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. They're both Geminis, so I like to say that it's like we have 4 kids. But yeah, it's just the 4 of us.
When we listen to someone's travel journeys, I always like to begin with the question of how did it look like when they were growing up? So here Ashley talks about her early travel memories and experiences.
I remember even being really little, my parents would take a lot of road trips, which I loved. Like, I know some people complain about being in the car. Like, I loved our road trips. I have 2 older sisters. They're quite significantly older than me. So one, and I forgot to say, originally from Chicago, but I have one sister who lives in Memphis, Tennessee, and another sister who lives in Tucson, Arizona. So a lot of summers would be spent driving down to Memphis to visit my sister, driving out to Tucson. My mother was from New York, so driving to New York to visit her family. I remember being around 6. Parents drove us down to Disney World in Florida. So yeah, it was a lot of driving around out of states and visiting different places, and I loved it. I loved being on the road. I loved traveling.
So we then move on to talking about Ashley's travel experiences as an adult. And I asked her to describe to us when the travel bug bit her.
Yeah, when I was in college, I had the opportunity to visit the Philippines twice on a service trip, and that was the first time I had been out the country, and that's what really got me started with this idea, like, oh my goodness, I have to live outside the country. Like, I love the whole experience of it. Trying to learn a little bit of the language that I could, just being immersed in a completely different environment. It was so exciting to me. And I really enjoyed it. So I was able to go to the Philippines for my internship. I was able to teach English in Malaga, Spain. Again, completely loved that experience. After college, I went on a ghost trip to the Bahamas, which was super fun. So yeah, just these experiences of being outside of the country and thoroughly enjoying myself. Just kind of kept that dream of wanting to be outside of the country alive.
Before we move on to Ashley's family's travel journey to Mexico and that part of their life, I asked her to describe what life looked like in the U.S., where they lived in Chicago. And she also touches on the events that led to or prompted the idea of moving outside of the country.
It was fine. It was typical. My husband, he worked 9 to 5. So we get home. He did not love his 9 to 5. But just what we did, I was staying at home with my daughter at the time. It was just her. And it was, I think, just a pretty normal, typical thing, but we just still somehow felt dissatisfied with it. Like, we wanted more time together as a family, wanted to be a little less stressed out. In Chicago, Chicago, I have such a love-hate relationship with it. Like, I love Chicago. I think it's probably one of the best places in the States to live, honestly. There's so much culture. It's a beautiful city. But there are also a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues with just the weather, just the weather alone, right? But also with police brutality and the politics and corruption and the crime, all this stuff. And we just wanted something better. So we were just thinking about possibly moving out of Chicago to a different city. But like I said, Chicago kind of spoiled us, because to me, Chicago has the best food, the best museums, the best parks. So we have visited a lot of different cities in the States. Me, my husband, my daughter, and then, later when my son came along, tons of places. We've been to like New Orleans, California, New York City, a lot of places, but no place felt like some place we wanted to move to. And that's when our conversation started turning to, well, what about trying to live outside of the country? So that's how we got there.
As a self-confessed planner, I'm always curious to find out how families plan moves across countries. So I asked Ashley to give us some details as to how she and her husband went about making this move and whether there were any goals in mind.
Man, let's go back to the motherland. Let's go someplace in Africa. And we were looking at different countries like Tanzania for a time. And we're like, no, let's do Senegal. Senegal has beaches. I was hoping a little bit of French I took in high school could help. But then after really like crunching numbers and thinking about it, I'm like, okay, trying to move out to Senegal might be a little bit too much. Let's try something a little bit closer to home. And we actually started looking at Central America. We had chosen Nicaragua originally, actually, for a few different reasons. We had like studied the history of the country, the politics, everything, and it seemed like a good fit. Cost of living was super low, very low requirements to make residency, not too far, pretty easy to travel to by flight. So we're like, yeah, let's go with Nicaragua. When we were ready to move, like, we had unenrolled our daughter from the school she was in, had sold a bunch of our stuff, like we were ready to go. That year they had some super big political uprisings, some government with like killing students, crazy protests. It was crazy. So we're just like, oh my God, we can't go here. So we were kind of at a loss because we were ready to unplug. But then contact that we had made in Nicaragua, she had ended up like fleeing to Mexico, and she told us, why don't we check Mexico out? And honestly, we had never considered Mexico. Or why? It just, I don't know if it didn't seem like foreign enough or whatever, but we just never considered it. But we did not have a plan B, which is something we learned over and over the hard way, that you always got to have a plan B and C. Hindsight. But yeah, so anyway, that's how we even got to Mexico. It was quite a happy accident, I guess you could say. Our biggest goal was just, we eventually wanted to have residency there. Because that's something that we wanted for, ourselves, our children, that, not to sound all doomsday or anything like that, but, the United States is an empire. And as we've seen with history, all empires eventually fall some way or another. And we just wanted to have another option. Like, okay, if stuff ever gets to be like, United States isn't the best place to be, can I legally live in somewhere else? So eventually we wanted to be able to get our residency in Mexico. We really wanted to become bilingual. But those were like the two main goals that we had, not too much other than that, and just to like enjoy life, right? But yeah, so we had set out and we ended up landing in Merida, which is a beautiful city in Mexico. It's one of the safest cities in this hemisphere. I know when people talk about Mexico, all people think about is, oh, the cartel's going to get you. And it's like, man, the cartel's going to get you more in the United States than in Mexico. But it's like, Merida is super safe as far as big cities go. Lots of culture, very beautiful. The only issue with Merida, that we had underestimated was that it's super hot. Like, if the temperature dips down to like 75 degrees Fahrenheit, can't think of what that is exactly in Celsius, but, it's like freezing for them. Like typical temperatures are like in the 90s, 100s. I don't know why we thought we would be able to handle that. And now I'm thankful to God that we didn't even make it down to Nicaragua, because it's like, if we couldn't handle that heat in Merida, there's no way we would have handled that heat there. But yeah, anyway, that's where we had ended up when we first got to Mexico. And our intention was just to be parked in Merida. Like, we were, we wanted a new home. We, just were going to set up shop there. But that's not how things ended up playing out for us. So
I then asked Ashley to describe what that first year of living in Mexico looked like.
Well, when we first got there, it was the complete honeymoon phase, right? Like, we first got there and we were so ridiculously in love, so infatuated. Mexico, Merida could do absolutely no wrong. Hate America, hate the States. Everyone needs to move down here immediately. This is the best, right? After a few months, that shiny veneer started to wear a little bit. We're like, oh my God, it's so hot. Why is it so hot? Just different things, dealing with different scammy people, issues with our landlord, like different things. And it got to the point where it's like, oh God, I think we made a huge mistake. Maybe we should have never left the States. We were calling home to our family and they're just like, y'all need to just come home. But we were like so invested. And so we were at the point where it's like, well, we could just go back to Chicago, cut our losses. It's not like we lost so much. We weren't so deep into our Mexico journey at that time. It would have been, we could have come back, no harm, no foul, but we didn't want to give up that easily. We wanted to try this. We wanted to see it through. Luckily, some friends that we made in Merida had gone to Oaxaca, place we had never heard of. And they told us, you know what? I think Oaxaca might be a little bit more what you guys are looking for as far as your experience in Mexico. Because one of the things about Merida, which makes it a really great place for anyone like looking to dive into possibly moving to Mexico, it's a soft landing, because a lot of the stuff there is stuff that you'll see in the States. Like, they have Walmart and Sam's Club and McDonald's, Burger King. Like, it's like all your stores are still there. But we were looking for something a little bit more, like, we wanted to feel like we were in a different place, I guess. That's what we were kind of looking for. And I mean, to be sure, like, it definitely is a different place culturally, but just even the optics, we just wanted something that felt different. So anyway, so we followed our friend's advice. We got into an ADEO bus, and took like a 24-hour trip from Merida all the way to Oaxaca. And the moment we got off the bus, like, we were like, yes, this is what we're looking for. Like, cobblestone streets, the candy colored, like, shops and houses, people still in their indigenous dress, street vendors selling all kinds of fruit and clothing and, just the different sounds, like everything. It was like sensory overload in the best possible way. And we're just like, yes, this is what we're looking for. And that began our time in Oaxaca. And we loved it. We really loved it. And we were there for about 2.5 years. It was the bulk of our time in Mexico, spent in Oaxaca.
So Ashley talks about her and her family moving around quite a bit after their first landing. I asked her to walk us through the many parts of Mexico that they've lived, for how long, and what was some of the reasons why they moved.
The first half of our time there was just normal. The latter part was when COVID hit, so that kind of changed the landscape in a lot of ways. But when we were first there, like, it's just beautiful. Like, loved it. You wake up, we'd walk down to the Mercado. So it's like this, like a traditional market. And we'd buy all of our, like, fresh fruits and veggies, and maybe buy a little something to cook breakfast with. And after breakfast, we'd head into the city or downtown into Centro and just get into whatever there was to get into. one of the best things about Oaxaca to do is just to kind of wander around and just see what you stumble upon, because there's always something new, something you never noticed before. So we would do that, just a lot of wandering around the city or going to the small towns and villages nearby. Oaxaca is known as being like an artisan center, and each of the little towns surrounding Oaxaca is famous for something. Like, you go to one town and they're famous for making black pottery, or you go to another town and they're famous for making alebrijes, which are those cute little wooden carvings that became more well-known after Coco. You go to another town for your rugs and your tapestries and stuff. So we do that, a lot of exploring, visiting friends, just living life, really. Just like living life, just being in this foreign place. And the nice thing about it, because I was working online teaching English at the time, so my schedule was really flexible. So, just teach a couple hours in the evening, and that just left the rest of our day for just exploring and enjoying life with each other.
Time for a bit of reflection. I asked Ashley how it made her and her family feel knowing that they're living in this almost surreal life, whereas almost a year prior, they were living in the US and their lives looked completely different.
It was a very surreal feeling to just kind of look around and be like, oh my gosh, I'm actually here doing this. Like, how very random. But wonderful at the same time. It felt good. It felt good to be able to just be able to be with each other and in this new environment. And, I don't know, just kind of discovering ourselves, discovering each other, discovering strengths that we didn't know we had. Like, I remember when I first realized my daughter was really learning Spanish. Like, I hadn't even realized she had been picking up on it like that. But I had taken her to the park one day, and this little girl had come up to her and said, ¿Quieres jugar conmigo? Do you want to play with me? And my daughter said, sí, yeah. And she went with her, but I'm like listening to my daughter talk to her, and they're just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the little girl's mother like looked at me and she told me in Spanish, like, wow, your daughter really speaks good Spanish. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. I didn't even know. So that's been really special, just seeing my daughter's Spanish bloom. She's fluent now, was considered fluent, and she's our translator, which has led to some very interesting situations. But yeah, it's just really cool to see, and seeing her confidence bloom, because we rely on her probably a little bit too much. But yeah, her confidence has definitely blossomed because of that. And it's cool being able to see my kids being able to move in different worlds.
I asked Ashley to comment on if there are any other factors besides cultural immersion that led to her daughter picking up Spanish so quickly.
Necessity and desire. Well, whenever she's been like at a park, or, when she was going to school, she was always the only, little English speaking kid there for the most part. In the past year or so, there have been like more kids from the States and other places. But when we were first in Mexico, she was almost always the only kid her age who was speaking English. And my daughter's very sociable. So if she wanted to make friends or play, like, she had to learn Spanish. And kids are sponges anyway. So, you throw your kid out there, they're probably going to learn quickly. So I think that's how she learned so quickly. Like, she had to. And, she was able to practice a lot.
So Ashley talks about her and her family moving around quite a bit after their first landing. I asked her to walk us through the many parts of Mexico that they've lived, for how long, and what were some of the reasons why they moved.
Yeah, we probably would have stayed in Oaxaca City forever. But like I said, COVID hit. And, the city kind of shut down, but in weird ways, like they closed off all the playgrounds. and parks, but bars and restaurants were still open kind of thing. So it was like, okay, we don't have anywhere to take our kids. And we had been visiting the coast. And at the time, to get to the coast, even though, if you look at the kilometers, the distance between Oaxaca City and the coast is like not long at all. But because it's like twisty mountain roads, it takes like 6 to 7 hours. And I'm talking hairpin turns. So I always have to take Dramamine. People get sick, and the bus driver, the van driver is like driving at like breakneck speed. So anyway, and after that, we're just like, you know what? Maybe we should just move down to the coast, because at least the kids can be outside. We had missed water a lot. As much as I love Oaxaca City, there are always issues with water, there, especially when it's not rainy season. They're always like near drought-like conditions. So we decided to move down to the coast, and we were there for about a year, maybe a little over a year. And it was a beautiful experience. Like when they talk about like paradise on earth, like this gorgeous beaches, gorgeous beaches. I know when you think about Mexican beaches, we think about Cancun and Baja and places like that, Puerto Vallarta. But Oaxaca's beaches are so gorgeous and don't see as much international tourism as these other places do. Like domestic tourism, like all the people from Mexico City always come down to Hualtuco, Puerto Escondido. But the international community hasn't, doesn't really know about it as much as the other places. So you'll go down to some of these beaches, and sometimes, we have entire beaches almost entirely to ourselves, which, man, like it was amazing. It was an amazing experience for us and for the kids. Like, that's when my daughter learned how to swim, where, they're discovering all kinds of ocean creatures. Like, we'd be swimming and we'd still see like these teeny little like stingray type things that thankfully didn't sting. We'd see like pufferfish and starfish, and you go out a little further and snorkel, you'll see sea turtles, like amazing wildlife. It was, just gorgeous. We made one more move because, as incredibly spoiled as this is going to sound, my husband and I did start to get a little bit bored in paradise. Like, you would think, who could get bored with beach every day? Apparently us. Apparently we could get bored with beach every day. I don't think our children have forgiven us yet, and I'm not exaggerating. But I just like, it was like small town beach. That's like, as much as I love nature and everything else, I am kind of a city girl at heart. And it's like, I was missing things like museums, different cultural offerings. So we decided, to move after about a year of that. And we had realized what an opportunity we had been given. Like, we didn't have to live in any one place. So we're just like, well, let's just see a little bit more of Mexico till, before the kids hit that age where we really do feel like we should settle down and be more stationary. Let's check out a few more places. So we decided to move to Veracruz State. And we were in Veracruz for about a year. Now, the interesting thing about both Oaxaca and Veracruz and parts of Guerrero, these three Mexican states, the coast forms what's called the Costa Chica. And the Costa Chica is where you'll find your greatest concentration of Afro-Mexicans. So Mexicans who look just like you and me, but they are fully Mexican, and not too many people outside of Mexico know about them. Even some other people in Mexico don't know about this population. But very strong in Oaxaca, and in parts of Veracruz as well. So that's part of the reason why we wanted to move to Veracruz. And we had visited it once before and had really liked the vibe of it. But we were there for a year on the half the time on the coast of Veracruz, and other half more inland in the mountains.
As you travel, specifically for certain countries and regions, you tend to realize that what is portrayed in media is completely different from what's happening in real life. So I asked Ashley what many Black and brown folks would be surprised to know about living in Mexico or any of its parts.
They might be surprised to know that there are Mexicans who look just like us. As you know, I hadn't learned that. My mother, she was a school nurse, so one time she went on a field trip as a chaperone with the school to Chicago has like a Mexican art museum. And there was an exhibition there about Afro-Mexican art and stuff like that. And so she had told me about it. And I remember hearing about it and just being like, what? Like Afro-Mexican, like what? And, you know, learning a little bit more about it and then being down there and actually seeing it. And it's like, oh my gosh, like you're Mexican and you have an Afro. Like, Mexico is not a monolith at all. Like, Mexico is, I believe, 32 different states. And within each of these states, you have all of these different indigenous people. You know, every state has its own culture and so many different indigenous languages being spoken. So yeah, so just seeing the diversity of Mexico was very surprising and refreshing for me to discover. Like, I love that. But also, even though there is so much diversity in Mexico, and even though, you know, there are Afro-Mexican populations, my family still gets a ton of attention. And I'm an introvert. You know, like I'm an introvert. So, you know, I like to keep to myself. I don't like so much attention. You know, even doing like podcasts like these, you know, takes me a little bit out of my comfort zone. So something I haven't gotten used to is the attention that I'll still get, like walking down the street and you'll hear the people like go like, oh, but you know, none of it is like negative attention. So that's something to keep in mind. Like, you know, no one's like pointing or laughing or anything like that. Like it's been, especially in Oaxaca, it's been very appreciative. Like, oh my goodness, your hair is so beautiful. And oh, your skin, it's so lovely. Like there's, like, it's stuff that'll make you uncomfortable because we don't point out like, oh my goodness, I love the brownness of your skin. Like, it's a very nice compliment, just not what I'm used to getting, right? So it's a lot of that. And I wasn't expecting that. Like, you hear about people traveling to like China or Japan and, you know, people taking pictures and stuff. Same thing happens in Mexico. And I still kind of don't understand a lot because I'm like, you know, we don't look so different from some of them, but yeah, we get a lot of attention wherever we go.
We interrupt the story to deliver a very important message. If you're liking what you're hearing and want to learn more, please like, share, subscribe, and leave us a review. Anything you can do to help us out would be greatly appreciated, as your support will go a long way in keeping this podcast alive. Thank you. Many of us, myself included, are always curious to know how families, whether living nomadically or just living a long term outside of the country, how are they able to stay on top of work and school? So I asked Ashley what she and her husband have done when it comes to these particular areas to best manage their times and just make sure that their kids are on top of their learnings.
Well, thankfully, since we're kind of non-traditional with both of those things, it's allowed for like a lot of flexibility with both. So at the beginning, like I was teaching English a lot, and then for the past maybe year or so, I let go of that, and we've been doing like a lot of different acting jobs, because before we even left the States, like my daughter was doing modeling and acting and stuff like that. So we would still kind of fly back for certain projects. But then we were able to do some projects in Mexico too. Something that people don't realize, a lot of the commercials, at least here in the United States, a lot of these commercials are being filmed in Mexico, because the production costs are just like way lower, which is really crazy. So we've been able to work on a few of those projects. Yeah, so it's like we don't have a traditional work schedule. And then with homeschooling, to get through our, homeschool lesson for today only takes maybe 2 to 3 hours. So that leaves a lot of time open to spend it how we want.
Here, Ashley talks in depth about her family's homeschooling experience, and I asked her to walk us through a typical day spent while homeschooling.
Oh, I just pull curriculums from different things that I like. Like, for example, their language arts. We're doing a curriculum called Blossom and Root. It's like literature and nature based, so it kind of fits in what my family's values. But yeah, we'll just work through like different core subjects, like, daily we're doing our math, we're doing our language arts. And then we loop through different other subjects like our social studies, our science, teaching the kids about herbs, teaching them about Black history. And we kind of loop through those throughout the week. But like I said, our lesson times don't take any more than like 2 to 3 hours, because it's not like, it's not like traditional school where it's a classroom full of kids and you have to take into account like lunch breaks and potty breaks and all this other stuff. So it's just like, okay, let's present the lesson, we practice it. We try to get outside with our lessons a lot. If we can learn it inside, we can learn it outside. So I try to keep the kids outside as much as possible. But yeah, and that's what we do. And we spend a lot of time. Oh, I supplement all of this with them also taking classes, because again, want my kids to be around other kids and interacting with other kids, using their Spanish, making friendships. So we've done everything from boxing classes and jiu-jitsu, art classes. Oddly enough, my kids have not taken Spanish classes, but they've been able to pick up Spanish just from, daily interaction.
More on family life. I've asked Ashley to talk about some of the biggest differences and similarities she's observed between family life in Mexico versus the U.S.
I think for the most part, something that really strikes me about family life in Mexico is that Mexicans really dote on their children. Like, children are just seen as like very precious, and there's always space made for them. So what do I mean by that? Like, when going to a restaurant, whether it's, not like a kid restaurant, but just a normal restaurant, there's usually a little space somewhere for children to go where they can color, or there might be some kind of play structure for them to play in. But yeah, in a lot of restaurants, it's just like normal. There's some place for kids to go play. And I love that. Because how many times can I imagine in the States just trying to wrangle my kids just to sit through the dinner? Like, please, let's just get through the dinner. But yeah, in a lot of restaurants in Mexico, you don't even have to worry about that, which has helped so much, has enabled so many like date nights for me and my husband. We're just like, okay, our kids are right there, but we can just have an adult meal at the same time. It's been very nice. There's even a day, Dia de los Niños, Dia del Niño, Children's Day in Mexico. It's a whole holiday for kids, and they usually have different programming and giveaways going on. It's April 30th, I think, every year, which I think is great, right? And it's meant to say that, parents or people in the United States don't care about it. Nothing like that, right? But it's just that, I don't know. I feel like kids can be kids more in Mexico and not be down on. Like, one of my favorite memories is when my son was a little bit younger. We were on the bus, and he was fussing and crying about something. Always crying about something, right? And we're on this crowded bus, and I'm sitting next to this lady, trying to balance both my kids on my lap, and he's crying, and it's like the worst. And she's just so sweet. She's just looking over and going, "Oh, ¿por qué lloras, guapo? What are you crying, cutie?" And, she has this box at her lap, and she opens the box. It's a cake, and she goes into her purse and pulls out this big knife, and she cuts him a slice of cake and gives it to him. And of course he stops crying. And I'm just like, reason 1042 of why I love Mexico. Just you don't understand how much free, like, lollipops and food and sweets my son has gotten from just crying and people just benevolently trying to get him to stop crying. So yeah, whereas, in the States, I feel like there's more of a judgmental, like, why don't you have your kids together? Like, why are your kids so wild or indisciplined or anything, whatever. But there it's more of a, kids are kids, which I appreciate. So just kind of seems like family life, isn't as compartmentalized. Yeah, I mean, in both places, parents just want what's best for their kids, but, I feel like we've been able to relax a little bit more, with our kids in Mexico.
From a cultural standpoint, I've asked Ashley to describe the biggest highlight she and her family have experienced while living in Mexico.
Learning Spanish, and again, this sounds so bad, was like I'm putting all my dreams like on my kids, because I feel like at this point, I've been in Mexico so long and feel like I've plateaued with my where it's like I should be so much better at my Spanish than I am. And, obviously it's like I can survive, like, I've lived, like, especially this last place we were in, like, nobody knew English. So, my Spanish is good enough to, get my point across and make conversation and stuff. But I know it could be better. It was very frustrating. But I'm happy for my kids at least. So it's like, okay, y'all bilingual, y'all live the dream. That's good. It just, but, so that's been really great. Just knowing that we did that, got that check mark. But my life has been just experiencing these different traditions, like, just some beautiful things, some beautiful celebrations that we've been able to be a part of and have been able to witness, especially in Oaxaca. Oaxaca is like one of Mexico's cultural gems. I'm biased. I wanted to say it's like Mexico's cultural heartbeat, but I know I'd be like making several groups angry if I said that. So I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it's one of Mexico's cultural gems. And, so like being able to witness the De La Guetza, which is like their biggest festival where they have delegations sent from each of Oaxaca's 7 regions, and they're doing their traditional dances, and it's just gorgeous. It's like it's just gorgeous seeing these different things they do every year. Dia de los Muertos, where death isn't this scary, dreadful thing, but just something that happens to all of us. But we remember our family who has passed, and so in that way they stay with us, and just all these things are just very beautiful and just kind of feed your soul, right? But so those things have stayed with me, and I know will stay with me for all my life. And I consider myself really fortunate to have been able to experience all of it.
Speaking of cultural immersion, I've asked Ashley why it was important for her and her husband to ensure that the kids were fully integrated into Mexican culture.
But because we didn't realize how much work it would be. No, but seriously, so when I first got to Mexico, I used to judge people so hard because it's like, you're like, why would you move all the way here and y'all are staying in Merida Gulch? Like, why would y'all do that? And I get it now because, it's hard trying to build relationships. It's hard trying to learn Spanish and dealing with, cultural differences. Like, all that stuff is hard and can get tiring. So I get why people do it now, but I think it's still invaluable to take yourself out of your comfort zone. It's like, man, you already left your country. You might as well push and go all the way. Otherwise, you're just leaving all of this richness that you could be experiencing behind, right? Just like with any type of relationship, whether a one-on-one relationship or whatever, it takes work to make it work well. And it's the same thing with moving into a different culture. Like, You're going to have that honeymoon phase where everything is beautiful and wonderful. And then you're going to hit that point where it's like you hate everything and you're ready to just pull up and just be done with it. But then if you can kind of stick through it and be like, you know what, and just finally get to a place of integration where you're like, you know what, this place isn't as wonderful as I thought it would be, and it isn't as horrible. It's real, and it is what it is. And you kind of accept all of it, warts and all. And that's when you're in that sweet spot where you can really start kind of thriving. And, I've seen it with my kids. Like I've seen them grow and blossom and being able to, make friends with kids of a completely different culture and a completely different language. Like that's a skill that translates into so many other areas of their life as they grow up. Like they'll be able to take the lessons that they've learned from this experience into anything when they're older, right? Like resiliency and conflict management and embracing differences and knowing that, even if you are different, whatever environment you're in, even if you're like the only one of you, whatever that means, you can still thrive. You can still enjoy yourself. You can still accomplish whatever it is you want to accomplish. You can still make friends. So yeah, that's why we wanted that. So our kids could have that, and so that our kids would know, and so that even ourselves would know like what it's like to be here. Because it's another way to connect with people. Like when we go back to the States and stuff, and we're able to run into someone who's from Oaxaca, and then we end up talking and just having the best time, like bonding over this shared thing. And it makes them happy that someone knows about, whatever hometown they're from, and makes us happy to be like, oh my gosh, we know about this, we know about that. And, it's just a really cool experience. So that's why we think it's important that when you go somewhere, whether it's to move somewhere or just to visit for a little bit, try it, even in the simplest of ways, just to really connect with the people there. Like it's valuable.
One of the goals of this podcast is simply put just to keep it real. While social media, as we touched on in the first episode, makes it all seem all glitzy and glamorous, we all know the realities, especially of traveling with kids, tends to come with its many challenges, despite the overarching benefits. So I asked Ashley to touch on this topic and to impart on us what advice she would give to those who are seeking family travels and considering navigating potential challenges, especially when it comes to cultural differences.
Keep calm. Also realize that every difference that comes up might not necessarily be racism. This is something we had to learn because coming from Chicago, which is a very city, and then going down to Mexico. And to be clear, everywhere in the world is racist, right? There's anti-Blackness everywhere, including Mexico. And not every experience that we had that we thought was because of racism was because of that. Case in point, Mexican culture is very hospitable, right? Like very warm, very hospitable, very loving. That hospitality does not translate into customer service, which seems counterintuitive. You would think that the customer service would be out of this. No, like the worst American customer service in some ways is better than Mexican customer service. Like the customer is always right. That is not a thing. The customer is almost always wrong, it seems like. So a lot of times we would have things and we would just think, oh my God, they're just being racist. And it's like, no, they don't share. Like, this is how whether it's not so much at restaurants, but just dealing with hotels or just different shopping things. And it's just they don't they don't care. And they'll never blame themselves. Like I remember I went, oh yeah, I guess it does happen in restaurants. I went to one restaurant, and I was just trying to, my son's pretty picky. So, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to get him some chicken tenders and call it a night. I ordered these chicken tenders. They came back and they were burnt. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I'm trying to talk to the waiter. And he's like, oh, no. It's like, it's an American style thing. And it's like, dude, I'm from America. Like, I know what these chicken tenders are supposed to look like. They're not crispy, they're burnt. And, he's arguing with me and telling me that the chef is the best, blah, blah, blah. Maybe after 10 or 15 minutes of going back and forth, they finally brought me another order out. But it was like pulling teeth. If that had happened to me when we first moved there, I would have just thought they were being racist and bogus and horrible. But after talking to other, Mexican friends and stuff, it's just like, oh, they did the same thing to us too. Like, it just, yeah. So, yeah, just learning to be discerning that, not everything is racism. But if anything ever does come up in it, it's, I feel more comfortable calling people out on it here in Mexico. Than in the States, because I know it's not going to escalate into anything worse. Like, there have been times me and my husband have been followed around by security in stores, and my husband will just point blank start asking the security guy, like, hey, why are you following us, da-da-da? And they'll, back off immediately. And, so yeah, but, just be aware that these things will happen. If you just keep calm and stuff, you can usually work it out or figure something out. But, well,
and for all the listeners out there who are very keen on a move like this, specifically to Mexico, I've asked Ashley to impart any tips that she has for parents who are interested in planning a culturally immersive experience for their family.
You could just keep it simple. Like, it doesn't have to necessarily be, a big extra thing to your plans. Like, it could be as simple as taking time to take your kids to a local playground, or taking your kids to downtown park, or going to Zocalo if you're in Mexico, which is like the town square where, there'll be someone selling ice cream and kids playing for sure. It could literally just be as simple as that. And I think that kids in Mexico, it's easier. I don't know if it's because you're a foreigner, so kids are kind of drawn to check out this foreign kid or not. But it's been a lot easier for my kids to just go up to a kid and be like, hey, you want to play with me? And them to start playing. And it's been in the States where it's just like, I don't know you, where are you trying to play with me? So I don't know. But yeah, it's super easy just to do that. If you want something more planned, and for some different cultural excursions, I know in Oaxaca, they do a lot of different tours, they do different artisan tours, art making tours. They're workshops your kids could go to. You could sign up for a language class. That wouldn't take up most of your time. Or when you're planning your trip, try to go during a festival of wherever you're going to. Mexico has so many different festivals in all of its different states, so it really wouldn't be hard to plan your vacation or your trip to coincide with one of these festivals and, go to it, experience it. It's be such an amazing, beautiful, colorful experience that would stick with your kids for ever. So
at this point, I've asked Ashley to reflect on what she has learned about herself during her time in Mexico.
Though, I'm just, being in so many conversations with people and small talk, and it's helped me grow, seriously, where it's I can now hold a conversation with a stranger for 5 minutes about my whole entire life, because, you will get asked everything, oh, where are you from? Why are you here? What do you do? And how old are you? And it's just yeah, just getting more used to talking more, honestly, putting myself out there more. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought I could do things that seem so simple to other people, but for me, it's just but being able to navigate these different things is a big win for me. So
We then chat about the kids, and I asked Ashley in what ways has the experience in Mexico impacted her kids.
It's definitely had built their confidence up. I'm not sure if they realize it yet, but just I can see it. But no, they're confident kids. Even my son's so funny. One thing is, this is kind of random. In the United States, we're a pretty short family. Like me and my husband, we're not very tall at all. In Mexico, we like tower over everybody, right? At least in the state, like in Oaxaca and Veracruz, we're, shorter people, especially Oaxaca, the shorter people. But, so my son, they think he's much older than he is. So he has been able to do things like he's hailed a cab down for us once, and thankfully we needed a cab, but it's just like, why are you coming to get like different things? He's called for checks, so he'll be like, check please, and stuff like that. And, so he's very confident. He orders his own ice cream, whenever we go and places. So yeah, so the confidence has definitely been built. But something interesting is that we are definitely raising, third culture kids, where, they're not Mexican, but the way they think about things, or even the way they'll say certain things, or even down to their body language or mannerisms are like so Mexican now. Like we realized this. We had visited Chicago a couple years back, and it like different hand signals when you say yes or no. Your fingers do different things, and they were doing this as they're just, talking to our family, and we're just like, oh no, like, we're just like, oh wow, like we didn't, it's just funny, like we didn't realize how much of the culture they're internalizing that's becoming a part of them. So that's been very interesting to see. I'm very curious how this is going to play out as they get older and older. But yeah, they're definitely, they're not completely American, but they're not Mexican, so they're doing this interesting in-between thing. But I think that's going to give them a lot of flexibility and fluidity in life, to be able to connect to different groups, to be able to empathize more, and to be like really culturally competent, which I don't know, it's going to be exciting to see, I think.
So if you've gotten to this part of the interview, you know that Ashley and her family's journey began with a question of where can they live? And that turned into where can they live outside of the US? So I asked Ashley, in what ways has Mexico become home to her and her family?
Well, I think something my family has realized, home is kind of anywhere we are. So as long as like we're together, we're kind of home. But also at the same time, like I love that idea of being able to feel home in different places. Chicago's always going to be like home for me. But something about, seeing a sunset in Oaxaca, or, chilling in Zocalo or eating an ice cream, like there's something that feels very homey about that. So I don't know, I appreciate and I'm grateful to be able to create these different spaces where I can feel at home at.
In closing, I asked Ashley, in future years when her kids look back at the time spent in Mexico, what would she like them to take away from this entire experience?
If there's anywhere you want to go, anywhere you want to be, like I don't, like I feel like a lot of the hangups maybe even I had, like, people like me don't go there, or, oh, people who look like me can't be here. Like, I don't want them to have that, and honestly, they don't. They don't have that idea in their head, and I want that to continue with them. It's like, hey, you want to go to, Japan or something like that? Like, definitely go. Or, you want to go, down to Colombia, or you want to check out France. It's like, you want to go to Senegal, like, wherever you want to be in the world. Or, you want to be back in Chicago, you want to be meeting, Miami or Washington, wherever. It's like wherever you want to go, you can go. Wherever you want to go, you can call that your home. You can make a space for yourself. So I'm hoping that this experience will be what kind of grounds them in that reality.
Thanks for listening to Travel Love Legacy. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Doing this really helps me to grow. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Travel Love Legacy. Till next episode, bye.